Joining us now is Joel Burnie, Executive Manager at the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Joel, thank you so much for your time. Our hearts are with the Jewish community. There is so much anger right now that innocent Jews were gunned down at Bondi Beach. They were murdered because of their faith. How does the community come to terms with this?
Well, it's just we just don't know the answer to that question right now, Gabriella. You and I have spoken so many times over the past 2 years about the clear and present danger that our community was in. We connected it directly with the hate speech
Mhm.
that spewed onto the streets of Melbourne and Sydney so immediately after the massacre itself on October 7, 2023, but was allowed to keep going on and on and on and escalating, where the hate speech on the streets became acts of vandalism on Jewish installations and buildings that then escalated to fire bombings of cars and houses, that escalated to fire bombings of synagogues with congregants in it and burning them to the ground. And still, the authorities and the leadership couldn't grapple with the problem, couldn't admit that the problem was as acute and as bad as what it was, and couldn't put enough resources in to stop this horrific event from happening. And through all the warnings, and through all the meetings, and through all the pleading with federal and state government and authorities to do more to protect us, to stop the pro-Palestinian marches in the streets of Melbourne and Sydney and allowing them to spew their hatred, false claims of genocide, false claims of war crimes. These false claims and the attack on Zionists, death to the IDF and all Zionists are terrorists. This campaign to dehumanize Jewish people led these two terrorists to go out on a Sunday afternoon in our country, in the heart of our country, Bondi Beach. It's not just a Jewish area, Gabriella. It's the essence and the postcard of what we are as a nation and who we are as a people. And they came there coupled with all of the cover that they had, knowing that since 2 years ago, when the angry mobs were yelling and screaming and chanting, "Where's the Jews?" and "F the Jews" on the steps of the Opera House in full view of New South Wales police, they were all aware that this was allowed. This was okay. We're not targeting Australians. We're asking everyone to get out of the way. We're only targeting the Jews, the Zionists, the dehuman. Enough is enough.
Joel, we've seen the horrific rise in anti-Semitism. Could this have been prevented?
This, of course, could be prevented. I watched the Prime Minister's press conference yesterday, very, very prepared, listing all the things that he had done. Well, I say to Mr. Prime Minister Albanese that I've got a list that happens to be twice as long as yours as to the things that you chose not to do, or a three times as long list of the things that you should not have said in the context of the war in Gaza, or an even longer list of things that you should have done to clamp down against the hateful rhetoric, against sustained hateful rhetoric against the Jewish people for the past 2 years. And you can say whatever you like, and we can be emotional about it, we could be political about it, but let's just brush that to the side. The Prime Minister list all the things that he had done yesterday, but 15 innocent people are dead, Gabriella. 15 people are dead on his watch, and he thought that the best thing that he could do was go out and list the things that he has done. However long your list is, Mr. Albanese, it falls short. It falls short of the expectation of the Australian Jewish community. It falls short to the expectation of the wider Australian community. And it falls short for those 15 innocent people who were butchered just because they were Jewish. The Prime Minister wants to claim that he's done enough in the context of all of that. Well, that's something that I would find very, very hard to comment further on.
Joel, he's making the conversation now about gun reform. Is that Is that enough? Is that really the only part of this conversation? Obviously, it's early into the investigation, but it's very clear that this was an attack against Jews. Is it just gun reform that needs to be looked into?
Absolutely not. And everyone sees it for what it is an issue that needs to be looked at. Of course, we need to look into why someone living in metropolitan Sydney needs to have a legal license to carry 6 assault weapons. We need to look into that. There's no doubt about that. But to pivot this politically and to attempt to shine a very bright light on gun reform to shift the conversation there and move it from the ills of his own government in being unable to stamp out this anti-Semitism, this toxin of anti-Semitism in our country, that will fail, Gabriella. And I will tell you why it will fail. It will fail now because the silent majority that we Jews felt existed in this great country of ours will hopefully, and what we've seen over the past 48 hours, will cease to be silent. What I saw with the droves of people that came out to Bondi Beach to lay flowers in solidarity with the victims, to I saw the amount of people lining up to blood banks in Sydney and Melbourne offering to give up their blood, and that dear man who was able to disarm one of the terrorists, a Syrian Muslim person of Sydney, who saved countless lives. That is the Australian, that is the Australia that I know. That is the Australia that I remember. And that is the Australia that I hope that we all remember and cherish, and we do everything in our power, regardless of the ineptitude or the vacuum of political leadership at a federal and state level. It is up to Australians, regular Aussies, coming together in a time like this to say, enough. We won't tolerate it anymore. We don't want to see it on our streets anymore. We don't want kids and Jewish people precluded from going into public spaces. We don't want Jewish creatives doxxed. We don't want people calling for death to the IDF and all Zionists are terrorists. Enough is enough. To all those people who have spewed their hatred, to all the Greens politicians who kept calling these false claims of genocide, child killers, and murderers, and painting us all with the same brush and making us all collectively responsible for what was going on in a horrific war many, many thousands of kilometers away. Where is your culpability in all of this? Where is your responsibility in all this? And when you come back and you point fingers at me to say that you had no idea, well, yes, you did. And you know why you did? Because the Australian Jewish community told you so. We told you that your rhetoric and your positions on Israel were causing hatred to be filled and spewed onto the streets against Jews. We told you that there was no purity in the pro-Palestinian marchers who were not protesting for the freedom of the Palestinian people, because if they were, they'd be protesting against Hamas and Hamas leadership and the imprisonment that Hamas has put them under. But no, Gabriella, that wasn't the message. The message was about finding and hunting down the Jews. And nobody should be surprised with this terrible outcome. So where to from here? I have full faith that unfortunately it took just such a horrific event with such a huge amount of innocent loss of life that it jolts that silent majority to hold hands with your Jewish brothers and sisters, to link arms as one people in Australia to say enough is enough. We will not allow this any further.
Joel Burnie, incredibly well said. It is up to all of us as Australians to stamp out anti-Semitism. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it, and our hearts are with you.
Thank you. Thank you as always.